At the beginning of any journey, there is a powerful surge of energy, a spark of motivation that fills the mind with dreams and the heart with purpose. The first steps are often taken with confidence and enthusiasm, not because the path is clear, but because the spirit is high. We set goals, we make plans, we speak boldly about what we will achieve. But time, as it always does, continues to move forward. The days pass, the excitement softens, distractions emerge, and the real test begins. Not in the beginning, but in the final moments, when no one is watching and the energy has run low. This is where the truth is revealed, not in how loud the start was, but in how quiet the finish becomes. And in this quiet, in this final stretch, the last week of July, everything is decided. There is something unique about the closing days of a chapter. They hold the weight of all that came before. They carry the echoes of the promises we made, the goals we chased, and the discipline we either nurtured or neglected. When people look back, they often remember the result, but the result is only the mirror reflecting the consistency of small choices repeated daily. It is easy to speak of goals, much harder to live them. That is why the last week of July is not just another 7 days. It is a mirror, a final checkpoint before a new month begins. It asks you silently, without judgment, did you follow through? Did you stay committed when no one was cheering? Did you keep moving when your motivation was gone? In the beginning, there is applause. Encouragement comes easily when your goals are still fresh and your vision is still clean. But over time, external support fades, and the only thing left to carry you forward is the internal fire you built for yourself. That fire is not fueled by emotion, it is fed by discipline. Discipline is quiet. It does not shout or demand attention. It wakes you up when no one else will. It keeps you focused when everything else tempts you to drift. And it is in the final week of any effort, especially the end of July, that discipline shows its true face. Think of a sculptor working on a statue. The first strikes of the chisel are large, bold, and noticeable. But it is the final touches, the quiet refining at the end, that reveal the true artistry. The same is true for any pursuit. Whether you have been working on personal development, physical training, creative goals, or healing from within, your final efforts shape the legacy of what you've done. In the last week, the temptation to relax is stronger than ever. After all, the month is nearly over. You may say to yourself, I've done enough. Or perhaps, I didn't make it this far, so what's the point now? But this is where the deeper work begins. The mindset you carry in these last days is more important than what you did at the start, because it speaks of who you are when the world is quiet, when the crowd has turned away, and when the finish line is near but still out of reach. If you push now, not out of desperation, but out of alignment with your purpose, you shift the trajectory of your path. You build something inside yourself that is far more valuable than any external result. You cultivate inner strength, and strength built in silence is the most unshakable kind. This is not about pushing to exhaustion, it's about being honest with yourself. Look at what you committed to. Look at where you are. Then ask, not with blame, but with clarity, what is still in my control? What can I do in these final days to honor the intention I set at the beginning? Even small actions, if done with full presence, can restore your momentum. The last week is not about rewriting the whole story. It's about finishing the chapter with integrity. It's about saying, even if I stumbled, I did not quit. Even if I was slow, I did not stop. Even if no one saw, I kept going. There is a sacredness to finishing strong. It plants seeds of confidence for the next beginning, because you know deep down that you honored your word not to others, but to yourself. And that kind of self-trust is not easily shaken. When you look back at the end of July, the question will not be how loud your goals were, it will be how quietly and consistently you moved when things got hard. That is what counts. That is what builds real change. So in these last days, come back to your breath. Come back to your center. Remember what you wanted when you began and act from that place. You don't need a miracle. You don't need a sudden burst of inspiration. You need presence. You need truth. And you need action. Simple, steady, and sincere. Because in the end, the last week of July does not care about your excuses. It does not remember your delays. It only responds to your action. And in this quiet stretch, where everything seems still, you are offered the most powerful opportunity to decide the meaning of your month and to prove to yourself that you are not just someone who starts, but someone who finishes. At certain moments in life, the pressure increases. Time feels short. Deadlines draw near. Expectations weigh heavier on the shoulders. And in those moments, what lies beneath the surface begins to show. The calm exterior we present to the world begins to crack, not because we are weak, but because pressure is the great revealer. It exposes the parts of us that are real, unfiltered and raw. The final week of July is one of those pressure points. It is a moment when distractions become louder, resistance becomes stronger, and the temptation to abandon discipline feels more justified than ever. But it is precisely in this moment that the most important question must be asked. What will you do under pressure? When the world feels chaotic, the undisciplined mind seeks escape. It jumps from one impulse to the next. It clings to comfort, avoids difficulty, and searches for distraction. Anything that can offer a temporary release from responsibility becomes appealing. Social media, entertainment, overthinking, even excuses. But in contrast, the disciplined mind sees pressure not as an enemy, but as a forge. It recognizes that pressure, though uncomfortable, is the exact environment in which inner strength is tested and revealed. Think of a blade being crafted. Before it becomes sharp, useful, and beautiful, it must be exposed to fire and hammer. The heat is intense, the blows are relentless, but every strike, every burst of flame refines the metal. In the same way, the pressure of a closing month, the last week of July, serves as the fire in your own refinement. It is not here to break you, it is here to reveal the edge you've been shaping all along. But how do you respond when the fire rises? That is the defining choice. Most people wait for motivation. They wait to feel ready. But in the final stretch, waiting is no longer an option. Time is moving, the days are slipping by. And if you do not act with clarity and strength, the opportunity passes. And with it, the confidence that only comes from rising in the face of resistance. In these moments, stillness becomes your secret weapon. When distractions scream, become quiet inside. When everything calls for your attention, choose one thing and give it your full presence. This is not just a test of productivity, it is a test of mind. Can you remain focused when everything else pulls you away? Can you commit when the pressure makes quitting look easier? There is a story in your behavior during this week. A story about how you deal with discomfort, how you hold your focus, and how you honor your word to yourself. When pressure sharpens you, it means you don't collapse under the weight. You rise to meet it. Not because it's easy, Not because you're always confident, but because you have chosen discipline over distraction. Discipline is not dramatic, it is steady. It wakes you up when you don't feel like moving. It keeps you aligned with your goals when no one is watching. And it is the very thing that allows pressure to become your ally, not your enemy. You begin to see that challenge is not here to destroy you. It is here to carve you into something better. Many people give up right before the transformation occurs. They misinterpret pressure as a sign to stop, when in fact it is the sign to push through. The mind will offer many reasons to pause. You're too tired, it's too late, you haven't done enough. But underneath all that noise is a quieter voice. The one that says, keep going, you're close, don't give your power away now. That voice is discipline, that voice is your edge. When you operate from discipline during the final week of July, something powerful happens. You no longer act out of fear or frustration. You act with purpose. Your steps become more deliberate, your mind becomes more still, and your actions, though simple, begin to carry more weight. Even a small effort, when done with full intention, can shift the entire momentum of your month. This is how pressure becomes your sharpening stone. You step into the discomfort and allow it to refine your character. You resist the pull of distraction and return to your path. You work, not because it's easy, but because it's aligned. And in doing so, you begin to develop a deeper confidence. Not the kind that comes from results, but the kind that comes from knowing you did not run from the fire. So as the final days of July approach, recognize the value of the pressure. Welcome it as part of the process. Feel its heat. Acknowledge its discomfort, and then step forward anyway, not with haste, not with panic, but with a sharp, steady presence that says, I know what I came here to do. Every day is a chance to strengthen your edge. Every choice is an opportunity to reject distraction and return to your discipline. And every moment under pressure is another step in your transformation. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. Let the fire sharpen you. Let the pressure shape you. And when the end of July arrives, you will not be the same person who entered it. You will be sharper, stronger, and more aligned with the path you are walking, because you didn't fold, you cut through. In a world that constantly demands more, faster, louder, and now, there is great strength in choosing stillness. This is especially true when time feels tight, when the end of a chapter draws near, and when your mind begins to race with all the things left undone. The last week of July often brings with it a sense of urgency. It whispers or sometimes shouts that time is running out. You may feel pressure to act quickly, to rush into decisions, to force progress. But this is the exact moment to pause. Not to stop, but to center. Because when the noise grows louder outside, the only way to act wisely is to become quiet inside. There is a tendency in the final stretch of any pursuit to panic. People look at what they haven't accomplished. They see the days remaining and feel overwhelmed. This urgency, if left unmanaged, leads to hasty decisions. We grasp at quick fixes. We abandon long-term thinking. We act from anxiety instead of awareness. But true effectiveness does not come from scattered energy. It comes from calm, clarity, and that clarity only emerges when you give yourself space to breathe. Stillness is not the same as doing nothing. It is not laziness or avoidance. It is an active choice to pause the mental storm, to stop the reactive cycle, to reconnect with what actually matters. In the last days of July, When your mind might be spinning with self-judgment or unmet goals, this stillness is more than just a tool. It's a necessity. When you sit in stillness, even briefly, something powerful happens. Your vision clears. The emotions that felt so urgent begin to settle. The pressure that seemed unbearable loses some of its weight, and the distractions, both internal and external, start to fade into the background. What's left is not noise, but signal. You can hear your intuition again. You can see what actually needs to be done rather than what your fear wants you to react to. In this final week, the greatest progress often comes not from doing more, but from doing the right thing. And finding the right thing requires a level of inner quiet. You cannot hear your direction if your mind is loud with doubt. You cannot access your strength if your energy is scattered across too many unfinished tasks. Stillness is not about delay, it is about alignment. When you act from that inner space, your actions have weight. They carry precision. They are fueled not by panic, but by purpose. Sometimes people believe they need a huge burst of energy at the end of the month to redeem lost time, but more often, what they really need is a shift in focus. Not more hours, but better use of the ones remaining. Not frantic movement, but intentional steps. This is what stillness before the leap offers. The ability to move wisely, not just quickly. Imagine a trained martial artist. Before they strike, they do not flail. They don't move in a frenzy. They breathe. They ground themselves. Their posture, their breath, their awareness, everything becomes quiet before the moment of action. And then, in one clear motion, they move with precision. This is not weakness. This is mastery. The same principle applies in life. The more important the decision, the more still you must become before acting. In these last days of July, you are standing at the edge of a threshold. 1 month is closing, another will soon begin. How you step from one into the next will determine the tone you carry forward. If you leap in panic, that energy follows you. If you leap with clarity, focus, and grounded strength, that becomes your foundation. That is why the pause matters. That is why reflection matters. And that is why stillness is not a luxury, it is a discipline. Ask yourself in these moments of pause, what am I running from? What have I avoided? What matters most right now? What small action would align me with my purpose? These questions are not complicated, but you cannot hear the answers if you are rushing. You must create the space for them to rise naturally, and then you must have the courage to follow what you hear. There is also an emotional clarity that arises from stillness. Regret, guilt, fear of failure, these feelings can cloud your vision if left unchecked. But when you sit with them instead of running from them, they begin to transform. You realize that your worth is not defined by how much you achieved this month. It is defined by how you respond in this moment, right now. You are not behind. You are exactly where you need to be to take the next right step. And perhaps that is the real power of stillness before the leap. It reminds you that you are not stuck, that clarity is always available, even in the last moments, that wisdom can come suddenly if you are listening, and that the leap you need to make, whether it's committing to a decision, finishing a task, or letting go of something that no longer serves, can be done with strength and grace when it comes from a grounded place. So do not rush blindly into the end of July. Take a breath. Take a moment. Come back to yourself. Let the world keep spinning if it must, but you, be still. Feel the ground beneath your feet. Remind yourself of your intention, and then, when the moment is right, take your leap. Not because you're pressured, but because you are ready. The closing days of any month carry a subtle power, but the last week of July in particular holds a quiet weight that most overlook. It is the final stretch before a new month, and with it, a natural turning point. July's final days do not shout, yet they demand something precise: choice. And the choice you make in these moments, how you spend your time, where you place your energy, what echoes far beyond the calendar. These decisions do not simply conclude a month. They ripple into August. They set the emotional tone, mental rhythm, and inner posture with which you will meet the next chapter of your life. When we talk about progress, we often think in terms of goals met or tasks completed. But what truly shapes your future is not just the number of things you finish. It's the energy with which you finish them. If July ends in frustration, distraction, or disappointment, that residue doesn't just disappear on the 1st of August. It lingers. It becomes the undercurrent of your next attempt. But if July ends with clarity, focus, and effort, no matter how small, you enter August with momentum, with strength, with a sense of direction. This is why the final week of July is so much more than a countdown. It is an alignment, a moment to check, what am I carrying forward? Am I dragging the weight of regret or the lightness of discipline? Am I stepping into August as someone who reacts or someone who chooses deliberately? You may not be able to change everything in one week. That's not the point. The point is to recognize that you still have the power to shift a trajectory. One decision made in awareness can interrupt an old pattern. 1 hour of focused work can renew your confidence. One moment of honesty with yourself can clear months of internal fog. This is not about perfection. It is about intention. Because it is not just what you carry into the next month, it's how you carry it. If July has been difficult, let that not be your excuse, but your fuel. You do not need to erase the past few weeks. You only need to learn from them. Look at where your energy went. Look at what distracted you. Look at what made you stronger. Take inventory, not with judgment, but with clarity. This reflection is not weakness, it's wisdom. And wisdom, when followed by even the smallest action, becomes transformation. The person you are at the end of July is the one August will receive. That version of you right now, tired or motivated, lost or clear, hesitant or determined, will set the tone. And tone matters more than speed. If your energy is scattered, you will start August chasing everything and achieving little. But if your energy is focused, even if your steps are small, you will start with direction, you will start with depth, you will start with truth. You might be tempted to say it's just a week, but time is not measured in quantity alone. A single week lived fully, with intention and presence, can outweigh months of passive motion. What matters is the quality of your action, the depth of your commitment, the clarity of your aim. So ask yourself, what would it mean to finish July with integrity? Not perfection, not pressure, integrity. To follow through on one promise you made to yourself. To clear even one space in your mind or your environment. To choose discipline over delay one more time. These are not dramatic changes, but they create a powerful shift. Because they remind you who you are when no one is watching. They anchor you in self-respect, and that self-respect becomes the foundation upon which you build the next month. The end of a month is not just a date on the calendar, it is a threshold. And you do not cross a threshold by accident, you cross it with awareness. You decide what you leave behind, You choose what you bring with you. If you bring regret, it multiplies. If you bring clarity, it amplifies. If you bring doubt, it deepens. But if you bring action, even a small, sincere one, it creates movement. And movement creates momentum. This is how transformation begins, not in giant leaps, but in quiet choices made at the edge of change. The last week of July is that edge. It's an invitation not to fix everything, but to realign. Not to sprint, but to step with purpose. And that step, repeated day after day, shapes who you become. Not just in August, but in every month that follows. So take a moment to pause, reflect, then move. Not because the month is ending, but because a new one is beginning. Your actions now are not just closing a chapter, they are writing the opening lines of the next one. Choose them with care, carry them with strength. Let them echo forward into a future that is shaped not by chance, but by your quiet, deliberate resolve.